Okay, I don't really know if this is a critique of Fourth Wing or it's just a review or a rant because I did not like Fourth Wing. Now, I can see why people would like this book. I really can. But I personally just do not like it. It was painful getting through this book. So if you clicked on this video, you probably already know the premise of Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. A girl who doesn't want to ride dragons because she'd rather not die gets sent to a deadly dragon military academy where she manages to not die and has a stupid amount of supposed sexual tension with a guy she shouldn't that eventually results in, well, smut. And if you're shocked by my summary, that's because that is literally all I knew going into this book. I'm not even on Book Talk. I avoid TikTok. And yet I'd heard that summary of it. It wasn't that appealing of a summary. But I did read the whole book. And that would be because of how the events in this book occurred. Something that I'd find interesting and promising would be set up, would be developed and explored, and then something dumb would happen. And then there'd be a new something else introduced, and it'd be interesting and would have promise, and something dumb would happen. And that cycle kept repeating and repeating. Now, I think this book could have been saved if it focused more on the dragons and less on Violet, the narrator. Violet is boring, and she's supposedly smart, but there are two smart things she does. She uses knives to scale a wall, and she poisons some of her opponents. That's kind of it. That's the bulk of her smart actions. She doesn't actually do that much in terms of proving she is of above average intelligence. She's got snark, which I think we're supposed to mistake for wit and being clever, but she's just snarky. This book has dragons. Please focus on the ancient overpowered dragon and the baby. They were actually interesting. They had some semblance of personality. Violet didn't. And the thing is, Violet is supposed to be the smart character. She's supposed to be clever. But she's dumb and ignorant the whole book. It would have been better if she'd made it into the academy, but actually took up Dane and that teacher's offer to join the scribes. And she goes and spends time learning all the scribe stuff and slowly is piecing together the buried truth of the kingdom and the Griffin Riders and the evil deathless magic guys. I don't remember what they were called. They had wyverns, I think. Something like wyverns. See, that's how little an impression this book left on me. I read it only a couple of weeks ago and I can barely remember details because the book didn't care to make me care about the details. Anyways, it would have been better if Violet, not wanting to die, had taken the route that got her out of immediate harm's way and we could then see her being clever. Be with her as she's putting together this great conspiracy in the hidden past, and then when she's close to putting it all together, she gets caught by her mother and thrown back in the academy. The day before threshing, or whatever they called it when they got chosen by their dragons. Then imagine if she was forced to survive solely on her wits, on her skill, on what she could do. Imagine if she was setting traps to take down other riders, or getting in their heads to turn them against each other. You don't need physical brutality if you can outplay your opponents, and that's what should have happened to show that this character is supposed to be smart. Again, the few examples we got of her being smart, they just weren't really much. The poisoning was fine, but aside from that, she was focusing on increasing her physical abilities rather than how do I continually outsmart everybody. And also, if they'd done that, it would have then made more sense that Tarn chose her. It was set up that he likes smart, clever riders. Fine. Good. There was actual foreshadowing that occurred. Real setup and delivery. But Tarn just chose her because his mate called him to defend the baby. He basically went, you got spunk. I'm here now. Might as well try it. It was very anticlimactic. If he'd been watching her outwit all her opponents and survive, and then sees her stand up to protect the baby dragon, then it would have been better. That would have given him a better motivation to choose her. And throughout the book, Tarn knew more than he was letting on and just didn't tell Violet. For some reason, he should have told her what he knew. He should have brought her into the fold. They should have been secret rebellion agents from the beginning. and then the stupid betrayal of Xaden wouldn't have been a thing, because it wasn't good. The man had promised the loyalty of the rebels' children with his own life. He was willing to die to ensure they were loyal and they survived. And instead, he decides to help with a rebellion? No, if he actually cared about those lives he was responsible for, he would have done everything in his power to cover it up and stop them. He would have done everything he could to keep them all loyal soldiers and ensure no one else died. Instead, he is actively making it worse and putting them all at risk. He does not actually care about them at all. Also, tension between a secretly rebellious Violet and a forced to be loyal Xaden would have been a far better enemies to lovers, because they would actually be on opposing sides. Because Violet not knowing the full picture does not make them enemies. It makes her stupid. I'm sorry, but a selfish jerk and an idiot do not have good sexual tension. Not at all. If you want to read good sexual tension, please go read the Seven Waters books by Julia Mariller, specifically Son of the Shadows, because Bran and Leoden had burning sexual tension, and it was well written too. Like, those initial 50 pages or however many it was, had those feelings simmering in every conversation they had while they were still doing the snarky banter while learning about each other's personalities and history. And then when they finally did sleep together, it happened because they were both emotionally raw and drunk, which just made things more entertaining. And then the following morning when they weren't drunk, Bran remembered his trauma and that he was supposed to be cold and cruel, and he furthered the plot. And that is how you make a male lead in denial, folks. Not Xaden. Xaden was just horny and too selfish to stop himself. At this point, I feel like I'm ranting about my own fanfiction of this book, but it's not fanfiction. I'm not a fan of this book. Is there a name for when you rewrite almost everything about a story because you see its underlying potential? Because this has been happening a lot with Wish recently. Like, almost all the content made about Disney's Wish is people rewriting to be closer to the concept ideas and not the corporate AI mess we got. Is there a name for this type of rewrite? Like, hate fiction or something? I'm genuinely curious, I don't know. But back to Fourth Wing. I don't mind some of the things it did. Like revealing Violet's brother is alive at the end and part of the rebellion. That was good. That was actually somewhat of a decent twist. But it also introduced ideas that went nowhere. Tarn kept calling Violet Silver One because of her hair, which always turned silver because of a childhood illness. Now, maybe this was to set up something in a sequel, I don't know. But that felt like it was supposed to be alluding to something, to some secret, to some extra reason that Violet was chosen, but that didn't happen. It turned out to be nothing. Again, maybe in the sequel it's something, but it was just kind of a wasted build-up in this book. This book just felt like instead of a plot, it was trying to be a character study of a character who simply wasn't interesting. There was no mystery being unraveled and hardly any build-up of there being anything wrong with the status quo. That just left us with this character trying to survive, but nothing to motivate us to want her to survive. Consequently, I was more interested in the dragons because, you know what? One was a baby, and the other was an overpowered ancient and had earned the right to be a cryptic asshole because you know he's doing it for his own amusement. He's a monster with a heart of gold, buried somewhere underneath a lot of spikes and teeth. And that made them interesting! This book had a plot that was happening without the main character's knowledge, and the main character wasn't entertaining or intriguing or anything, which made this book just hard to get through. It did just enough to make me want to read it for the potential I saw before killing that potential. And it wasn't like it was getting any emotions out of me on the side. Like, there are plenty of better dragon books out there. There are better Dragon Academy books out there. Go read To Shape a Dragon's Breath, please. It's doing a lot of the same things, but much better. Fourth Wing just didn't have enough of interesting characters or relationships and didn't focus in on the characters that were good, the dragon, and it just ended up not being a very enjoyable book to read.